This is my research into horror movies. Firstly, I'll look at mise en scène, as well as location, structure and pace. The first thing I notice is the establishing shot. This is where it really introduces the concept of the film to the viewer, as it shows the setting of the rocket as it's taken off. Also at the same time it has the text, but in the form of a typewriter, as it's synchronous to the date the film is set in, 1974. The first 30 seconds are really just telling the scene of the film really, and all the previous attempts of the Apollo missions, etc. The lighting is fairly high key at the time, and despite it being stock footage, it looks like a fairly safe scene with little threat. After this though, there is electrical pulse of sound. This is where the stark contrast begins. The font reads in the centre with only a black background until now. From here on, the footage becomes grainier, the cuts become more frequent, even though the horror hasn't really begun yet. It is from here that the non-diegetic music begins, that it's quite low-pitched and glum. Now the tension really starts to mount, with unforeseen circumstances like the US flag disappearing and other sorts of strange things happening. The location becomes a lot more cramped, and they tend to be inside the smaller aircraft a lot more. As the trailer comes towards a conclusion, the pace quickens and the music goes faster and higher to a climax, where it will now fade to black.
Something's inside my suit. Nate!
Surprisingly, they give a lot of information away about the film. They do give a lot of the plot away, with all the background as well, leaving the conclusion only really unclear. That said, the background to the film is the main reason people would go to see this film. It's not really a stereotypical horror film with all the usual victims, so it has to really be explained in further detail. Without this, the film is unlikely to be as successful as its unique selling point really is the intrigue of the attempted Apollo missions. They don't fully introduce us to the characters, but it is clear they are NASA astronauts. The pace is now quickened, and it reaches a climax when one character seems to be a lot more isolated than the other. It's used to entice us as we have seen various parts of the film, and will hopefully come back to see the full film. I will now move on to the camera angles. There's not really too much to talk about this because it's mainly stock footage, so it's mainly just in the form of almost CCTV. One thing I do notice though is that the camera composition is often grainy, which is fully representative of the time period. Not only this, the composition is unclear when showing these shots, as if they tended to be in space, which coincidentally it is in space. They tend to be high angle from the static view that a CCTV camera may have. On occasion it also takes an over-shoulder view from the aspect of one of the astronauts. This usually happens in the scenes of high stress to highlight the emotion. On to sound. There's limited sound really, apart from the diegetic music that's usually the characters and the surroundings. Most of the sounds tend to be crackly and just something common of the 1970s. There's the noise of rockets etc, but not much else. Symbols. One symbol is the use of the American flag, which is eventually thrown on the floor. In that, the Americans take their flag very seriously, with lots of pride, showing the power and the dominance and the ownership of the moon, as it were, over the Russians. So when the flag was removed, they were highly angered, saying, "Where's the flag?" The unknown villain is showing a complete disregard of this, almost saying, "I don't care if you are American." Another is the Russian writing at the time, with the cultural context of the Cold War and the space race and all the other stuff going on in the 1960s and 70s. It implies that the Russian cosmonauts will feature a main role in the villain of the film, or at least some role. The text specifically is very classical. It's in the typewriter form. There's a big emphasis on the words "until now," which after this, the real plot and subplots are given away. At first, there isn't really much more than a space mission. It's pretty average. But here we know that this is special emphasis attached to it, as it's dedicated a few seconds to this simple frame, and it's shown that there's certainly a lot more than just your average space film.